We've got a full agenda tonight, so we probably ought to get started. I'm Randy Speck. I'm the chair of ANC 34G. I represent 34G03, which is the single-member district that includes the area essentially between Nebraska, Nevada, and Broad Branch, with a little bit more on the other side of Nebraska. We welcome you today. This is our regularly scheduled meeting. We meet on the second and the fourth Mondays of each month. And so we met 2 weeks ago, and we'll meet again in 2 weeks. We'll begin by having commissioners introduce themselves. We're missing a couple of commissioners, but I know that they're just going to be late. And so we'll go ahead and start without them since we've got a full agenda. Becky?
Hello. My name is Rebecca Madak. I'm 34G04. I have Broad Branch to Utah, Tennyson to Nebraska, and a little bit on Morrison. I have Lafayette and Park and Elementary School.
I'm Chris Romboludi, Vice Chair of the Commission. 3G07, which is bounded by military, Reno, Nebraska, and Nevada.
Hi, I'm Jerry Mallitz. I'm the Commissioner for 3G05. That's from the circle on the side of Connecticut Avenue down to about military and across to Broad Branch.
Hi, good evening. Dan Bradfield. I represent 3G06, which is the western portion of Connecticut Avenue, Chevy Chase Circle, down to Chevy Chase Park, down to military.
Okay, we have a quorum, so we can conduct business. I do expect the other two commissioners to be here. They are both, by the way, at other ANC meetings, ANC-related meetings, and I expect them to be here shortly. I would also add, Jerry Mallett brought some brownies that are in the back of the table if anyone is interested. I see some of them have been discovered.
They're not going home with me, so they're quite delicious.
Ah, good. Okay, the first order of business is to adopt our agenda. This agenda was published on our website, on Chevy Chase listserv, or next door. We sent it to the Current as well. Are there any modifications or changes we need to make to the agenda? Anyone have a modification or change? Okay, all those in favor of adopting it? 5-0. Okay, first thing on every one of our meetings is commissioner announcements. I have just a couple. The first is just a quick update on the status of the Chevy Chase Community Center renovation or modernization. This is a process that we've been going on for more than 2 years, and we expect it to continue for quite a while because we're still just in the early stages of the design of the new building. The request for proposal was issued on January 11th, and the responses, the proposals, are due on February 19th. So we ought to shortly know at least what designers are going to bid on the project and have some idea of the ideas that they have for the project. We'll keep you posted on that as developments occur, and there will be a number of them over the next 2 years. Next is the library facilities master plan. The DC Library is developing a master plan for all of their libraries to help guide the planning for library services across the city. They're conducting a survey, and I'll put the link on the survey in our minutes. There will also be a community meeting on Tuesday, February 26th at the Tinley Library, and I believe that meeting is at 7 o'clock, and you can there make your comments known about the future plans for the library in the city. Finally, there is a vocal art performance opportunity, a group called Politics and Art, which is a program that's co-sponsored, I think, by Councilmember Grasso. Will spotlight DC-based artists who use the power of their voices to inspire, entertain, and empower. Artists who live in the district may apply to participate with their song, spoken word, or a host of other expressive modes in general, to tell your stories and share messages. This is a showcase format with multiple locations within the Wilson Building. Each act will perform a set of 15 minutes. Applications are free and deadlines for submission is February 22nd. And I'll have more information on our website. It's on will be in our minutes. Okay, Becky, any announcements?
I don't have any, but Commissioner Chandatuk Garfield asked me to just say that, and I guess it's Abe too, as you said, they're meeting with residents now, and they're working on the bioretention project, and they're trying to resolve that between DDOT and the residents, so it's an ongoing discussion. That's all she wanted me an announcement.
I will mention as well that we did ask the residents if they would move the meeting to 6 o'clock so that we could be there, and they said that wasn't convenient for their residents, and so they're meeting at 7 o'clock. Coincidental with our meeting. Okay. Chris?
No, no.
Jerry?
I'm just going to add something to what Commissioner Speck said about the community center. So last week, Commissioner Speck and I met with 3 representatives from Department of Parks and Recreation, and it was a very good meeting. It had to do with finding transitional space for programs and activities that take place in the community center now, so that when this building is being renovated, that we have space for it to go to. So first, let me tell you what they received from us. They got a list and some background on the programs who submitted survey responses. We tried to elicit responses from all the programs that currently exist here. They got a copy of the survey we use. We cross-checked out with the list of winter programs that take place in the community center. Prepared a summary of the responses we received in a single chart. They also got a zip file of all the individual responses with no individual names attached to that. And what they said they were going to do is start looking for other facilities that programs could take place in, whether it be schools, nearby recreation or community centers. UDC was talked about as a possibility. So they're going to investigate all the things that they have that they could use in terms of resources, and then we're going to get back together once they have some information for us. So it was a very good first meeting, and this was the first meeting we've had about this topic with them.
All right, we'll begin with announcements from the mayor's office. Gabrielle?
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know, my name is Gabrielle Priest, and I am the kind of new Ward 4 liaison in the mayor's office. I just wanted to make sure that you all have my number. Since I do not have a card yet, I'm going to say my contact information out loud. Hopefully I'll have a card soon. But my phone number is 202-603-7182. And my email address is Gabrielle, that's spelled Gabrielle, .priest, Priest, 2@dc.gov. Okay, make sure you have the 2 in there or that will not go to me. 2 is in the number, not spelled out, just 2. Okay, so the first thing that I have is we have Alert DC. So we are encouraging residents and motorists to register to receive important weather alerts from the district on their devices by signing up for Alert DC. That's going to be at alertdc.dc.gov. We are also beginning March 1st, the DC Fire and EMS Department will still respond to your 911 calls for help, but in some cases where a hospital's emergency department may not be your most appropriate path to care, we will assess your symptoms before connecting you with a registered nurse in an effort to provide you with the right care right now, depending on your needs and symptoms. The nurse may refer you to a local clinic instead of a hospital for care, so that's called Right Care Right Now, so that's going to be starting next month in the mayor's efforts to make us a healthier city.
Let me just mention, we did have a presentation on that program in our minutes. Somebody can go back and look at them.
Oh, sorry about that.
And get much more detailed information about it. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So I really don't have too many announcements today. But the last one that I have is that Fair Shop February started. And as a part of Fair Shop February, Mayor Bowser has announced that all rides on the DC Circulator will be free all month of February, so it'll end February 28th, which I think is really awesome. And additionally, the mayor is going to be hosting her annual budget engagement forums across the district. These forums are an opportunity for the mayor to hear directly from residents before the budget is finalized about how Washingtonians want to see DC's money spent. So I'm just gonna, if you guys want to write it down, I'm gonna just let you know the dates, things like that. I do have a few flyers, but I only have like 4 or 5, so just so I can make sure everyone has it. Today we had the senior telephone town hall, so that's passed, and then we're going to have a forum at the Author Capper Community Center. That's on February 21st at 6:30 p.m. We're going to have a forum at the Deanwood Recreation Center on February 23rd, and that's going to be at 10 a.m. And then this one is probably the most relevant to you all with where you live. The last forum is going to be at Roosevelt High, and that's going to be at on February 25th at 6:30 p.m. That's pretty much all I have today.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Anthony from, there you are. Here I am, Cuddy.
Hi everybody, my name's Anthony. I'm from Councilmember Che's office. I have 2 brief announcements. Last time I was here I talked about oversight, so just to be more specific, this week the Committee on Transportation and Environment is holding 2 budget oversight hearings. On Thursday, February 14th, we are having, not budget oversight, performance oversight hearing for Department of Energy and the Environment. That again is this Thursday at 11 a.m. At the Wilson Building in room 412. And on Friday is Department of Public Works' oversight hearing. That is Friday the 15th at 11 a.m. also in room 412. All of the oversight hearings are posted pretty prevalently on the DC Council website, so just go to dccouncil.us if you're looking for an oversight hearing for a different agency. And finally, the February Chat with Che event will be on February 23rd at the new Compass Coffee in Spring Valley. The address for that location is 4850 Massachusetts Avenue Northwest. I will be there, and it's from noon to 1:30. Yes.
Question, when you said it's DC Council US, is there a dot?
Yes, dccouncil.us.
dccouncil.us.
The council holds firm to its .us, while everyone else in the government world has moved to .gov.
Thank you, Anthony. Anyone here from Councilmember Todd's office? I think they're all with Councilmember Todd tonight. Okay, Ruth, you had one other announcement I know you wanted to make?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ruth Robbins from the Friends of Chevy Chase Circle. We are the nonprofit community organization that works with the National Park Service and takes care of the circle and makes sure that the Park Service is doing their job, and we do a lot of enhancements. All the benches, the tulips, the manicuring that you see done is done because of your donations. We are an organization made up of both Maryland and DC residents. And I'm standing here before you now just to say, we've come out, we have a new newsletter. I invite you to have a look at it. It summarizes what we've been up to lately. We also have a great website, so please keep current. Our next big project, which will take us all the way to the Commission of Fine Arts, is that we are going to try to light up the fountain. I believe the fountain will look more beautiful, and it will be a big safety boon as well. So that's where we are, and we'll be back to talk to you about that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Any other community announcements anyone wants to make? Yes, sir.
My name is John.
Can you come up to the microphone, please?
Hello, good evening, everyone. I apologize, commissioners, I didn't have a chance to email you. My name is John Carlos Green. I work work at the Office of the Attorney General, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator. And I'm just here briefly to talk about what the next term for the Attorney General will be as far as what his goals are and initiatives and priorities especially. He has 4 priorities that he wants to target. One being elder abuse, the second being civil rights, the third being child trauma, and the fourth is reducing gun violence, which couples with child trauma. So I'm here to let everyone know that those are the 4 priorities that we're going to be working on in the next 4 years. And I will be back in the following months to talk more about those specifically and to talk about the initiatives we bring forward on those priorities. So thank you for your time.
We're looking forward particularly to the whatever you have to say about gun violence. I know that's a very big issue in the city right now. And I know there was discussion at the oversight hearing for the Metropolitan Police about the proposal to shift a lot of the prosecutions from the district courts, the Superior Court of DC, to the district court. And I know that's a very controversial thing, so if we can hear from the Attorney General at some point about that, that would be
Absolutely.
great.
I can definitely get you some.
I know that's not within
positions on that.
the specific purview of responsibility to prosecute those cases, but I think we'd be interested in hearing from you.
Sure, I can get you his position on that.
Thank you. All right, any other community announcements? Okay, we're going to jump right into what I think is going to be a very interesting discussion tonight about the bus turnout. I see it's now called the Chevy Chase Bus Loop Facility, which is a new term. Chris, Dan, you want to take this over?
Just very briefly. Excited to have you. This is something that we have talked about for a good 3, 4 plus years. Something that we've had conversations with WMATA, we've had conversations with varying entities. There has been for a while now a possibility of use of federal funds to assist in this. So I don't know how all the pieces finally came together, but we're excited to kind of hear where we are and where we're headed.
My name is Stephen Powers. I'm the Senior Program Manager with WMATA with Metro. I'm here to talk about this facility.
Could you speak closer to the
Is
mic?
that better?
Yes.
WMATA owns 3 bus loop facilities in the Northwest. There's one on Calvert Street, there's one on 14th Street, and there's the one here on Connecticut Ave. All 3 of these facilities were inherited from Capital Transit in the 60s, and they're all in need of refurbishment in the state of disrepair. So we packaged all 3 of these as one design project and we're going to put them out simultaneously as one construction project. Does everyone have a handout? So that if you go to the second page, you'll see the Calvert Street facility, which was an old tile house. It's right by the bridge that goes to Connecticut Ave. And then on the next page, you'll see Colorado's Avenue. It's very similar to the one here in Chevy Chase Circle, colonial style brick building. And then from the aerial photo of the Chevy Chase, you can see the whole lot that we're going to be doing as part of this renovation. It's not just the building, but it will have some civil flat work associated with it as well. So the meat of this presentation, scope of rehabilitation work at the exterior building. We're going to be replacing all the doors and windows. We're going to be repairing the cupola. We're going to wash the entire brick exterior. We're going to replace the portico columns and repair the roof, restore the copper roof. We're going to be replacing the entire canopy structure that's at the back, and restoring the columns, and all the lighting will be replaced as well. There's a windscreen that's at the back of the building that is going to be totally replaced, including the knee wall that supports that structure. And then we're also going to be doing some minor repairs to the slate roof. Fortunately, the slate roof's in really good repair, but we have a copper gutter, so we can restore all of those as well. Inside the building, we're putting a new restroom. There's one restroom in there right now. so we'll be putting a second one. We'll also be putting in a janitor room, and a new lighting system, and a new security system as well. And on the site work, we'll be replacing, we're doing mill and paving on the asphalt. We're going to be putting new concrete bus hard stands where the buses park, and we'll be installing new landscaping out back in a small little section. So as we move through, you see the how it looks right now, where the canopy is all falling apart, and then it's all boarded off. As you go to the next photos that show the exterior, it kind of shows you the portico that we're going to be replacing, the copper roofing out back. You see all the sidewalk will be replaced there. You see it all moldy and wet. The round windows will be replaced to match the historical look as well. And this is in the center, you see that windscreen that I talked about. That will be totally replaced as well. The canopy structure itself, all the decking in the, on the picture in the lower right-hand corner, you can see the decking has holes in it. It's rotted and rusted away, so we'll be stripping the canopy down just to the bare steel, replacing the fascia steel, and replacing all the roofing system for that, and redoing the columns. When you get to the interior of the building, that's in pretty good shape. The terrazzo brick has held up pretty well. So what we'll be doing is, there's currently a break room in there that we're going to turn into a bathroom. And you see that little alcove that has a drinking fountain in it right now. We're going to be turning that into a janitor's closet, so there'll be a slop sink, so they'll be able to clean the facility. That, in a nutshell, is the whole project. On the very last page, you see a landscaping plan. There's 4 trees that are out there, out back right now. We'll be keeping the largest tree. The other 3 are distressed and are dying, so we're going to replace those with new trees. And then the ground cover right now is grass. We'll be replacing that totally with different roses and pachysandra and all types of ground cover, leather ground cover. So it's 10 different ground covers stitched into a pattern. Gives it a little more life. So, any questions?
Just a second, before we begin, can we get commissioner questions first, as we usually do? Christian? Dan? Chris?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. I'm an architect, so I've been following this. I was involved in the initial discussions with our preservation office on this. Question, maybe a suggestion. You know that windscreen in the back that creates a dark, nasty place, which is going to be a hangout for, could be a hangout for undesirables or people sleeping at night. You know, it had a purpose when there was a very busy bus shelter, but now you get a bus every 20 minutes, and I think you can save a lot of money in making this a much safer project by just eliminating that windscreen altogether. It serves no purpose whatsoever anymore. I mean, that's basically, I think, what you're doing. It looks like it's going to be a nice job. It's being developed in sort of a haphazard way before, and this looks like you're really going to put it back to the original condition, which I think is. The other question is, how are you going to secure it at night? Is the last bus driver going to lock it up, and the first bus driver in the morning going to open it up?
Metro is going to a one-badge system, so it's an electronic card reader system. So you won't have keys to open it up. You'll actually use your pass. So we'll be putting an electronic system. We're also putting some security cameras, so that will tie into our overall MTPU will be able to monitor as well.
The last question is, I don't really understand the landscape. Just a square with 4 trees. Where are they going? What's it relate to?
I'm sorry?
The landscape plan. Where are these 4 trees? You show a square, and I'm not sure where they go.
There's currently 4 trees out there right now, out back of the...
Oh, is that in this little square area right here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a picture of it in the handout right before the landscape in this site.
Okay,
Shows
I got it.
Yeah, so we're taking out 3 distressed trees out of that.
So my question is, you have to get in there with one pass. Is it going to be open to the general public during the day?
No,
No, it's just for the bus
This
drivers?
would just be a WMATA facility. There'll be no break room in there, so it will just be restrooms. So it won't be really a working space at all.
So it's no restrooms for the public that was taking the bus
That's
either?
correct. This will just be a WMATA
Oh.
facility.
So this has been a long time coming. Did you ever give any thought to making it more of a mixed-use area and having other activities there other than bus loop? Sometimes buses don't even use the loop, they just pull up alongside of it and they rest, and that's a lot of property there that could be used for many different purposes on weekends, if not during the week. Was there any thought given to making it more of a mixed-use project?
No, not in this project. This project was solely to make it as it's being
Can you
designed.
talk into the mic? We can't hear you, I'm sorry.
It was not. It was solely designed to be a bus facility for WMATA with just the bathrooms.
From the other 2 that you say on Colorado and Calvert, did you ever hear from the communities there about a desire for making it more than what it is?
No, we did not. The Calvert Street is a unique one because it was an old Tuttle House restaurant, so it has different historical significance and space inside. So it has different challenges there as well. But
I'll have follow-up later.
Yeah, I was just curious and following along the lines of Commissioner Malek's question in terms of just being open to other mixed-use purposes for the facility. Is that something that you're saying at this point your agency has ruled out, or just you were narrowly focused on that one piece in terms of rehabilitation?
as the engineer who was just handling the design of this project, the facility was never intended for a mixed community use. It was looked at as a WMATA facility.
Oh, when you say intended, are you talking about during this process in terms of your review, or are you talking about when it was initially built?
I can't speak to when it was initially built. I just took over the project about a year ago, and it was to design the bathrooms for a WMATA facility.
Okay.
Make it secure, make it historic, add some charm to it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Why don't we start in the back? Yeah, go ahead,
I would like
please.
to
Thank you.
please.
Thank you.
I have one question too. I know this, we've considered at various times making this, going for a historic designation for this building. It's not been designated as an historic building yet. Do you have any anticipation that you would go for historic designation? And are you doing these renovations consistent with historic preservation guidelines?
Yes, we are working very closely with Andrew Lewis of the State Historic Preservation Office and DC Office of Planning. This package right now, this design, is currently undergoing their review as well, and his input. Our historic architect is with me tonight, so he can answer any more of those pressing type SHPO questions.
And could you introduce him, please?
Jeff Wenzel.
Jeff
Winslow.
Wenzel, how do you spell that?
W-I-N-S-T-E-L.
Okay. I know that's something we've all been very interested in, making sure that it's going to be accurate historically, and we're not going to destroy any of the historic aspects of the building. I know there are a lot of people who are interested in that. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yes.
If you could come up to the microphone, please.
This building has been determined eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. That's a process that has to be undertaken when we use federal money. And we did obtain a grant from the Federal Highway Administration through the District Department of Transportation. Also, there has been a National Register document about the transit and bus history and resources for the DC area that specifically identifies this building as potentially eligible for listing in the National Register. We are not going to be undertaking a designation process, but for all purposes, it's considered historic, and the work has to be reviewed against the Secretary of the Interior standards for treatment of historic properties, rehabilitation, and I have been working with Andrew Lewis at the State Historic Preservation Office to ensure that the property and plans and product will meet those standards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One
Okay.
last thing before I start taking questions, on the very last page, on the back of the presentation, is our current schedule. We're currently, as I said, we're finishing up the design right now. We've got code reviews, so we feel that'll go on until the spring. Hopefully the code reviews won't be long and drawn out. Then we're going to do a construction procurement sometime in the spring to summer. We're trying to issue a construction MTP by late summer, and then get the pre-administration and get the permits, and then go ahead and do the construction period, which we're tracking is 6 to 8 months, but if it's over a winter, it may drag it out. So that's where you see the schedule. Okay.
All right, let me, I will recognize people in the audience just so we make sure we keep this organized in some fashion. Yes, okay. And if you would, introduce yourself first and then ask your question.
My name is Terry Jean. I reside in Norwood Military Retirement. Please have a very simple question. What does NTP stand for?
Oh, notice to proceed. Notice to proceed, I'm sorry.
Okay, Bonnie.
Mine was just informational. When was the building originally designed?
The building was constructed in 1941. It was designed by Arthur Eaton, who also, his firm also did the building on Robert Avenue. Perhaps one of his most well-known buildings is the Cleveland Park Shopping Center, which is on Connecticut Ave.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Arthur Eaton also did West Sacramento Green apartment building.
Does that mean it was built in the spring or summer of 41?
I'm sorry?
Spring or summer of 41, because I was in the bus terminal in the fall of 41. For you.
Okay. Okay, Alan?
Okay, as a point of information, that was the beginning of the Fool 1 line, on which you could make ice cream when you were way down K Street, and then on to Capitol Hill. Secondly, I wonder how many bus drivers actually use this building?
I'm sorry, I can't
I
speak
think it's a
to the
small number.
operations.
And since we all understand that David Maloney contemplates designating that building, it is in effect designated. So it is, you're right, it is an historic district. But that doesn't mean that it can't be functional for public purposes. For more people, more time. You are charged with figuring that out. But there has been discussion in this community about that in the past.
Chris?
Just add something about the bus drivers. I remember this from the previous meeting we had on this. Bus drivers do use that facility. You know, they have a fairly long route, and you know, if they don't have a facility like this, they have to go into restaurants or something like that. They do use it.
For the future, I do hope we at least keep an open mind, the possibility of using that facility for other purposes. I mean, on weekends, for instance, it would be an ideal place for a farmer's market or something like that. There are lots of possibilities in that space, and it would be a shame if we didn't take full advantage of it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yellow.
Did you say that the
Just introduce yourself first, please.
yeah, my name's Christine, Sadie, some residents. Did you say the building would only be accessible to the
So that entire space is basically wasted except for the bathroom.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I do hope that the community can do something to, this is such a waste of opportunity. I do want to say to Lamonza, I think the elementary service is great. And it would certainly be more used if that wasn't such a menacing looking site. Right after this meeting, I have to go pick up my niece there, and as she gets on that bus, I'm expecting a lot of.
I think you're going to be very pleased with the new changes and all the lighting, and it's going to be a much more.
But I mean, I think, we'll get more use out of it, and just imagine what was done from the Avalon view. It's a very large site. If you look at the map, it's enormous. Pop-up gallery, pop-up retail, food trucks, and you can just imagine what a site, what a beautiful site it would be. So it's great that you're doing this. I hope this everything is pristine, but I could be. And I hope that there will be a possibility.
Okay, yes, sir.
My name is Pat Stillman.
Okay. I can't hear you.
It's Pat Stillman.
Okay.
Another one North Hampton Street. It's a very simple question. The new door on the north side of the perimeter facing Connecticut Ave. Is that going to be a decorative door, or can you describe that face?
Well, the door that will go in there will replicate the door that was originally there. We have historic photographs. So it will be upper panel glazed, multi-light, and lower solid panel. Decorative, I suppose you could say so.
Okay, yes.
Yes, my name is Maria Grant. I grew up in this area. I now live on the Maryland side of Chevy Chase, where I work on environmental issues and issues for Chevy Chase Village. I have a question. Is it still possible to comment on the landscaping, or is this already set?
No, you can still,
Let me jump in on that. They originally said that their comment period would close on February 15th. And we said that's much too soon. If we're only learning about this for the first time tonight, that's too soon. So we got them to postpone the comment period until February 26th, which is the day after our next meeting. And what we had in mind was at least to give the ANC an opportunity to hear from the community about this and to prepare comments that the ANC could submit, as well as any comments that any individual want to submit.
Can you give us the website designation, because it's impossible to
see these drawings. We can send a clearer copy.
Okay.
Yeah, I will include that in the minutes of our meeting as well.
Just a couple of things I wanted to raise. Is there, do you have an idling policy for buses? Will they be idling in this area?
I'm sorry, I can't speak to the operations. I'm more of a rehab engineer.
That is an issue. It has been an issue for National Heights. Also, to the architect,
We are supposed to follow the regulations of the District of Columbia. But what I tell people, if you see bus operators idling, get the number of the bus and send it to me, I'll give you my card, and we will make sure that that doesn't happen.
Can you please introduce yourself?
I am Ann Chisholm. I work with the Government Relations Office. I'm assigned to DC.
Thank you.
just a couple more questions. Any plans for a semi-permeable surface? So instead of just plain concrete, so that they don't get huge amounts of runoff in that area? I'm just wondering if that's a possibility.
I must let you know I'm not the architect. I'm an architectural historian, actually. I have not seen any plans that would call for a semi-permeable surface.
The plans, the civil plans call for a mill and pave overlay, so the existing asphalt would just be replaced.
And then in terms of the vegetation, is it going to be native, do you know?
Yes, native, and they're hardier plants that don't require the landscaping, the irrigation.
Excuse me, what was your last name?
Powers, P-O-W-E-R-S.
Jerry, you said you had something more.
I didn't know how long this is going to be going on. I just want to say that 78 years ago, when this was first built, land wasn't at the premium that it is now. There was a lot more space for a lot of things. I think this is a wasted opportunity that now, when we could make a lot better use of land and having all that taken up for a bus turnaround, that we're not considering some sort of mixed use or alternative hours use for that facility. And I'd like to know what you suggest that we do to make those views known.
Certainly put them in the comments.
Well,
We'll forward.
But who should they be? Who's somebody at WMATA that is a decision maker on this?
And
Children and government relations.
We have a director of real estate, and at WMATA, we have a director of real estate, and her name's Nina Albert. I will make sure, Nina Albert, I will make sure that I get you her contact information, because they're not going to be able to, discuss that. That would be handled by the real estate department. Okay.
But as government relations, could you help us facilitate an ANC?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And it's very nice to meet you, right?
Okay.
After so many years of seeing your name, so many years, wonderful to meet you.
Okay, but
I think that's something that we need to start, maybe a mini work group here to start a conversation. Because I don't think some of the ideas that we have are, quite frankly, not practical. And they're very beneficial to the community, and I think it's very positive for WMATA as well. And I think there are easy solutions to what may happen, how the loop may be disrupted for a couple hours or something like that can be done. And I think it's very, very, very beneficial for everyone. So,
I'll work with your chairman and make sure we can set up and talk to you.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Well, thank you very much, Ms. Powell. One more, sorry.
If there will be consideration of some mixed use in the future, is there anything that's being done now in terms of repair or restoration that might include something? Where you do something and then it has to be ripped up, and that would be used possibly as a barrier to further consideration?
What you see right now, we're almost replacing in kind from as far as a footprint of infrastructure. So if there was a mixed use need, whether you want playgrounds or a community space, or that will be changing some of the design type things, depending on what the community comes up with on that land. And it's a shared resource, and
But the construction period doesn't begin until fall of 2019. So that's according to the schedule.
The current schedule is to finish the design and the code reviews in the spring of 2019. Okay. And that's the important date.
Okay, but design can always be changed, but once you start construction, then it's a lot harder.
Well, once we finish design, then we go into procurement, so the contracts start for construction at that point. The procurement.
Okay, we can get one more question, and then we've got to move on. Yes. And can you identify yourself first, please?
This is Australia, I live about 2 months away. I would be interested in knowing, and you probably don't know this answer yet, but that whatever lighting goes in is compatible with the lighting, and that it doesn't have some incredibly harsh, bright light that doesn't, isn't compatible with the neighborhood, it makes it look like
It's all down lighting. It's all new LED, so it's a little more user friendly. Not off the top of my head, but you can certainly put that in the comments.
We have a lighting task force in this ANC, so I'd be really interested.
Yeah, no, that's easy.
And our
question for me to answer.
ANC has actually passed a resolution asking the city to use 2,700 lumens as the standard.
And it should be not a problem to put that in the design.
2,700 replicates the color of the star bulb also.
Yeah, and we may already have that in there, but I can confirm that. And if not, it should be.
So it all be downlight?
Everything is down underneath the canopy. We're not putting in any gas lighting type fixtures, anything like that.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we are looking forward to this process. And as I mentioned, we're going to have this on our agenda for our February 25th meeting, where we'll discuss any comments that the ANC might want to give on behalf of the community. And of course, as I said, anyone can submit comments on this process. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Little Beast Bistro. And Dan, you want to take this one?
Actually, I'll invite Robert Gordon to come up and say a few words. It's actually pretty straightforward. The applicant, or Little Beast owners, when you first opened, I believe on the one side deck on McKinley had a few, I believe they call them sun triangles or something of that nature, to block off some of the summer sun to the patrons. And I think they may have realized that some of the sun was not blocked, and so when they need to do so, they would like to put up an awning, and are going through the process on that.
Okay. Commissioners, thank you for having us here. My name is Robert Gordon. I'm a partner in Little Beast along with my two sons. Our president, my son Aaron, is he's got babysitting duties tonight and wanted to be here. We have two issues that go hand in hand having to do with the sidewalk cafe. The first issue has to do with rent, and I'm in communications with Commissioners Bradfield and Speck on this issue. When the deck, Little Beast is directly across Connecticut Avenue from here. The sidewalk cafe on the McKinley Street side is on private property. If a sidewalk cafe is on private property, you have to go through the DDOT Public Space Committee rigmarole. However, you're not required to pay rent because you already pay rent for taxes. That's part of what the landlord's responsibility is. So he pays taxes for his building plus the land that looked like sidewalk. In October, we received a bill for $3,275, which amounts essentially to the $5 per square foot fee for the entire deck on McKinley Street. We believe that it's misapplied. So we went back to the Public Space Committee and asked them to review it and come up with a way of resolving it or refunding our money. In the process, and Commissioner Speck has been fully apprised of this, they came back to us and said in order to we get a refund, you're going to have to file a new application for with the Public Space Committee. However, if you know the system, which I now know very well, there's no way to file for a refund for rent unless you file for something else. So we filed at that time, since we were just coming up with the idea for the awning. We did both at the same time, and we hoped that they would resolve it at the same time. And now we're scheduled to go before the Public Space Committee in the end of March. We've done this before. We've been through the entire process. The existing deck and the patio are all to spec, all to code, everything is to code. The designer of our awning is one of the premier designers of awnings that are serving the district. So there are several things that I am asking the ANC to do. The first one is to prepare a letter to the Public Space Committee or to whomever is in charge of rent and ask them to at least to return our money, which, you know, we're out. And that's not an insignificant amount of money since it happened in October, it was paid in October, it's already 4 or 5 months, and we want it. So that's number one. Number two is to approve an awning. We have the drawings of the awning and all of the engineering drawings associated with it. The awning is a simple awning. It's a cloth awning that comes out over the entire deck. It will shield the deck from rain and some sun, and is made of cloth. It's on a superstructure of aluminum that is sort of, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's a latticed aluminum, and it's there on a permanent basis. So those are two things. And the third thing we would like is, there is a meeting of the PSC in February, the end of February. We'd like to have our application moved up from March to February, because if we proceed in March, it takes over a month for them to fabricate the awning, which puts it into the end of April. By the time they install it is sometime in May. Now we've already lost a couple of months of good opportunity for business and for people to sit out there and enjoy themselves. We believe that this bistro is a benefit to the neighborhood, and we think that that deck adds to the streetscape of Connecticut Ave and McKinley. So those are the three items that we're interested in proceeding on.
Anything else you want to say? Well, there was one question that we had, Dan and I both had, and that is, when does an outdoor cafe, an unenclosed outdoor cafe, become an enclosed outdoor cafe? And it's a little ambiguous in the statutes. And I went back and looked at the reason this is important, by the way, is that at our meeting, I think it was in May of last year, we discussed this as being an unenclosed outdoor cafe. And there was a question, I remember, that someone asked, well, what happens if it becomes an enclosed cafe? And we said at that time, well, there will have to be another application, and we'll have to judge it by the standards for an enclosed outdoor cafe. Well, I went back and looked at the definitions, and this is in the DC regulations, and there's a definition for enclosed sidewalk cafe and unenclosed sidewalk cafe. And in the enclosed cafe, it can also have an awning. It can have, it doesn't describe exactly what the enclosure would be, but for the unenclosed sidewalk cafe, it says any authorized use of public space adjacent to a restaurant that contains tables, chairs, railings, planters, etc., which is open to the sky and at the sides, but may include awnings or umbrellas, which is able to be removed within a 24-hour period. So the way I understand that is that an awning is acceptable for an unenclosed outdoor cafe. And it still has to be removed within 24 hours, as the whole thing does have to be capable of being removed in 24 hours. But as long as it meets all of those other requirements, I think it is still an unenclosed outdoor cafe, even though it has an awning and is not necessarily open to the sky. But I think this fits the definition, in other words. So for that reason, I think I could support this as being consistent with what we approved previously and what the neighbors expected.
You know, the issue, the definition is extremely important, and we've gone through all of the regulations and all of the documentation having to do with that, and we're still confused. And we're confused mainly because we were instructed, demanded by the PSC district DDOT person to apply for this this permit. So we applied for the permit. We would much prefer to move forward. Under no circumstances do I want to not comply with what DDOT is asking us to do, and then jeopardize not getting anything until, many months out, because I'm afraid that can happen. So I would and if you look at the TOPS system, they require that this ANC plus 06 buy off on their form somehow. Although you may not have even received anything that says that it's pending. You've seen that.
We haven't received the official notice. We haven't received it, have we? No.
You may never see it. I mean, this is a rabbit hole that we've been dealing with since May of last year. No, earlier. At any rate, my hope is that the ANC was not opposed the whatever they're demanding of us as the number 2 item.
Well, just as I read the statutes, this probably did require an application just for them to decide, okay, this is inflammable material, it's can be removed within 24 hours, it meets all of the other requirements. So it probably did require an application, but it should be relatively straightforward, I think.
You're probably right. I can't say. I mean, it does say open to the air, open, and the awning is not open. It's okay.
But it expressly permits
awnings.
awnings.
But it does permit awnings. It does. So, I really can't say. But the certainly trying to sort this out in front of Matthew Marquis and his group, Matthew Marquis and his group would be beneficial. And the sooner we can do it, the better.
Robert?
So you might want to look at International Building Code, see what their definition is, because that's the building code the district uses and it's used all over the United States. Commonly, a building is enclosed if 50% of the 4 walls, less than 50% of the 4 walls are open. So you take your area of the 4 walls, you take it and you divide it by 2. It's less than that, it's enclosed. I mean, that's the common definition. But the other question I have on this bill that you got here, is this an annual bill or is it a monthly bill?
Annual.
Okay. Is it true that, is this something that all restaurants that use public space would pay? Because I don't understand why you're saying you shouldn't pay it.
Why we should not?
Yeah.
If you go up and down Connecticut Avenue, you'll see a lot of awnings. So Parthenon pays. I think they should pay.
So if they pay, why shouldn't you pay?
Because we're on private property. They're within the private property line, and they are not.
Let me see if I can explain it, because Matthew Marcoux, your friend, at the Public Space Committee, explained this at a Public Space Committee meeting last May. And he said, I mean, there was some confusion about whether this was a summer garden or whether it was an outdoor cafe. And summer garden typically would be on private property. But this is on private property, but within the building restriction line. So it is on public space, but it's not on public property. It's all on private property. The rule is that if you're on private property, you are paying taxes on that, and therefore you don't have to pay rent. It's your property. If your outdoor cafe goes beyond the property line and onto public property, then you have to pay rent for that portion that is on public property. And so in this instance, and I've looked at Robert's drawings, and I think it's correct and accurate, that the outdoor cafe is entirely on private property and not on public property. And therefore, if that's true, and I think it is, and if Matthew Marcoux is correct, as I think he is, then you did not owe rent on that property.
That's our argument.
And I think it's correct. I mean, it was not clear, it was not, the original drawings that you submitted to the Public Space Committee had two different drawings that had the property line on one, building restriction line, the place where the outdoor cafe was. It wasn't on one drawing. And I think that's what confused them. And if you put it on one drawing, it's pretty clear that it's all on private property.
Okay, we've had that confirmed by the DC surveyor.
Right. Just before we get to that, Alan, just see if there are any more questions from commissioners. Jerry.
So as I look at this is, the three sides are open. It's not enclosed at all. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there still will be space heaters underneath the just curious.
Well, I mean,
because I see
in
them.
the winter we probably will. Hopefully not as many as we had before. We had about a dozen of them. I think we could get away with only 3 or 4. But yeah, I mean, that part of it is to hold the heat in.
Okay.
Okay.
If the 11 total, 11 feet, is the district's interested in it?
Yes.
In my property, it's 11 foot.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, that's the building restriction line. And DC can do anything they want to do within that building restriction line. They can require them to tear the deck out at some point if they have a use for it, for instance. Yes.
I'm Lee Foster, and I happen to be an architect, and I'm part of the group who sent you a letter about this, saying we are not opposing this at all. We are a little concerned that this is beginning of mission creep. We are concerned this is beginning of mission creep. Then the awning comes, and then the next thing, by some right or some slight alteration, then they get to enclose the whole thing. And we strongly object to that, but not to the awning. And we've had no problems. Little Beast has been a great neighbor. Terrific. So we just object to the idea that once they get the awning up, it's some minor technicality, and then suddenly we get what we had with the diner, where there was an awning, and then there was plastic, and it was horrible. So I also would like to say we want to be sure that the awning matches the drawings. There was some discrepancy in the drawings and what was built. We're not objecting to that, but those were not the same.
Right.
So we'd like to be sure that the drawings are accurate and say that absolutely we object to the idea of glassine siding or any kind of siding dropping down from that canopy that starts to enclose it.
Yeah, I think as I understand the regulations, if they started putting up any siding, it would again have to come before this commission and have to go before the Public Space Committee, and we'd have an opportunity to object at that point. So in terms of mission creep, I don't think that that's possible without coming back and getting further approvals from the ANC and from the Public Space Committee.
And that's not just a minor thing, it's already
No.
open only on 3 sides. We're just going to drop something and it's temporary.
No,
I'm a little
no.
worried about this 24-hour thing.
Yeah.
That
That
24
it can be
hours
removed
you
within.
remove an awning.
Is it removable?
If I were the owner and I put up the awning you're talking about, I would not want to be talking about taking it down 24 hours.
Well, that's the requirement.
That's the requirement for anything in public space. Anything. I mean, no matter
Is the
what.
awning really removable within 24 hours?
Yeah, that's what the Public Space Committee will determine, and I'm sure that they had experience with doing this before, and they'll look at it and say, yes, okay, that meets our standard, or not. They'll let us know. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I am a student at American University. I live in this area.
What's your name?
Stars, last name. And maybe this may be because I'm not very much involved in community centers and town hall meetings. I'm just now breaking into it. But what is the biggest objection to having an enclosed space? Maybe that's why it's going a little bit over my head. Is it just because that's not the permit that you asked for, or is it a whole nother objection?
Well, I think the problem with an enclosed space is it becomes more like a building then. And it has greater mass. It just takes up the public space in a very different kind of way. And that's the objection. I might also mention that the district has an interest in this too, because they also charge additional rent for an enclosed outdoor cafe as opposed to an unenclosed. It's twice the amount of rent, which doesn't apply in this instance anyway. Okay, anything else from Commissioners? Shanda? Okay, thank you, Robert. Dan, you want to propose a motion?
Which one do you want?
What? I got what I put together. I think we ought to take the three issues separate from everything.
Okay. And I actually think the first and the easiest is number 2, because we have had the discussion, and I assure you we've had the discussion. Randy and I have had this discussion for 2 months about enclosed and not enclosed, because we made a promise to you. I mean, I talked to many of my fellow commissioners. We made a promise. But that being said, I also understand having to meet what they would like to. So I agree, or I would like to offer, I would make a motion that we do not object.
No, I have no objection.
No objection to the to the Open Space Committee application.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. Okay.
Back to the first one, which is just, God bless being a small business person in the District of Columbia. Letter, I was thinking letter is the proper format.
Yes.
That the ANC develop a letter in suggesting and assisting in reconciling this discrepancy.
That and the conclusion should be there's no.
The conclusion that they're not, that they are on private property.
Sent to the Public Space Committee.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, second? All those in favor? 7-0, okay. Any others?
And then third, that we send an additional letter in support that they move the date up, because you did meet the deadline for the February.
A couple weeks before.
Yeah, you met the deadline for the February meeting. So while you're being put on the March meeting, it's a tentative list anyway, so we don't really know that you're not on the February. But let's send a letter of support that you be placed on the February meeting.
Second?
Public space also.
Yes.
Yes.
All those in favor? Okay, 7-0.
All public space.
All right.
What do you know, Steve?
What?
What do you know?
Public Space.
Public Space.
Public space.
Public Space Committee. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. All right, the next item on the agenda is oversight hearing testimony. And as I announced at our last meeting, and as Anthony mentioned tonight, the council is in the midst now of oversight hearings, and these are, I had someone question me at one of the hearings as to why do they have these hearings. They're held every February by the various committees of the council, and they are held for every agency in the district, so that they just get the agency in front of the council and let anyone testify at that point about the performance of that agency over the last fiscal year, and for the council to hear that testimony and to ask questions of the agency head. And so we authorized at our last meeting testimony for the hearing on the Metropolitan Police Department and the Department of Health. And this last week I gave both of those testimonies, and they were very well received by the council, I thought. Some of the people from Knollwood came to the one on Department of Health, And I think it's a real opportunity for just regular ordinary residents as well as ANCs or any other organization to come in and give the council their view about how the agency has performed. And given the fact that we have a lot of interaction with district agencies, we thought it was important for us to at least let the council know how we feel about what they've done for the last year and whether there were improvements that needed to be made. So there are, I believe, four additional oversight hearings that are coming up that I thought we might want to offer testimony on. The first one is the Department of Energy and Environment, and that oversight hearing is before the Committee on Transportation and Environment, Councilmember Che's committee, on February 14th, Valentine's Day. And we've had two major interactions with the Department of Energy and Environment over the last year that I think probably warrant our giving some testimony. The first is their implementation of the relief program for the Clean Rivers Impervious Area Charge that DC Water puts on water bills. And there was a statute enacted by the council last year, part of the budget bill, that provided for a rebate to certain nonprofits. And it charged the Department of Energy and Environment with implementing that rebate program. And so the department has issued regulations that produce a very, well, their interpretation of the regulations at least produces a very odd result. And the biggest complaint we have, I think, we brought it up at, I think, previous meetings, is that the way they interpret which nonprofits are entitled to get this relief, it's only those that were created as nonprofits under district law. And any nonprofit that was created under federal law is not entitled to any relief from those CRIAC fees. Now, it makes a real difference here because we've got two continuing care retirement communities in our neighborhood. One is Ingleside and one is Knollwood. They perform basically the same functions for seniors and provide it very, very well. We're very proud to have them as part of our neighborhood. Ingleside is a nonprofit under district law, and it is eligible for the CRIAC relief. Knollwood, which is a military retirement community, was authorized as a nonprofit under federal law. And the way DOEE is interpreting the statute, they say Ingleside can get relief, Knollwood cannot. And that just doesn't make any sense from our standpoint, I think. And I've gone back and I've looked at the statute really carefully. There's not anything in the statute that gives DOEE the authority to make that distinction and to discriminate between those two institutions. And so the first part of our testimony to the council and to Councilmember Che's committee would be that we think DOEE has misinterpreted the statute and has made a mistake here, and that ought to be corrected. I'll talk about this in a little bit after we get done with all of this testimony, because there's also testimony before DOEE directly about their regulations tomorrow night. And I'm going to suggest as well that we submit testimony there too, to try to convince DOEE that they made a mistake and they need to change this. The second item that we would offer testimony on would be DOEE's efforts to repair or replace a culvert that goes under Broad Branch Road. And we had a presentation by one of the water flow specialist. I can't remember exactly what her title was, but she came to our meeting and described the problem, which is that the culvert under Broad Branch Road is too small, and as a result, you frequently get flooding that crosses over Broad Branch Road. And it becomes a real safety hazard. And we've got pictures of some of the instances when, you know, it was like a river going over Broad Branch Road there.
27th Street?
This is between 27th Street and Linnea. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's right across. It's right.
His wife had an accident right there.
It's right across the street from the Ivory Coast Embassy.
Yeah.
And this has been a problem for many years. DOE is trying diligently to solve it, and they've got a design now, and they're proceeding with it, but they have an impediment, and that impediment comes from DDOT, which owns the culvert, essentially, and DC Water, which owns the culvert on the other side of Broad Branch, where the water is going to go. And so it's now they're hung up with DDOT and DC Water. And so the testimony that we would propose is to the council, let's fix this problem. And if it takes knocking heads between DC Water and DDOT and DOE to get them all together, let's do that so that we can resolve this problem and get it fixed. That's the testimony. I've circulated the testimony to the commissioners. Anyone have any questions or concerns about it?
Were any of our comments that we submitted to you
yes.
taken into account?
Not taken into account. No. Okay. So, is that with us? Okay. Is there a second to a motion to adopt that? Okay, all those in favor? 7-0. Okay. The second piece of testimony is before the Board of Elections. And the Board of Elections comes up here because last June, Chris and I went down to a Board of Elections meeting. And on behalf of our ANC, and also on behalf of ANC commissioners who joined our letter from all 8 wards, we asked the Board of Elections to change the time when ANC commissioners or candidates for ANC can pick up their petitions to get on the ballot. Because unlike all of the other elected positions for the general election, which had 2 months to circulate their petitions, the ANCs were given only 1 month in the middle of the summer, which included the July 4th holiday and was really difficult for a lot of commissioners to do. So, and there were a lot of ANC commissioners across the city who agreed with us on that. The board did not. They concluded that they didn't have enough time to give notice of that. I don't think anybody would have been prejudiced if they'd gone ahead with it, but nevertheless, they refused to do it at that point. And what we're asking the council to do in their oversight role is to suggest and even require that the Board of Elections treat ANC candidates the same as all other candidates for general election offices in terms of the time period when they have to circulate their petitions. Chris, go ahead.
Let me just say something about this also. It's really rather bizarre that the only time that you can, to be an ANC commissioner, you have to take, you have 1 month from approximately July 4th to August 4th to do your petitions. I think this is an unpaid position. The idea is to try to get as many people to apply to be an ANC commissioner. And it's a service to the city, and to try to have an onerous application period, when some people like to take vacations, it's the hottest part of the year, isn't fair, especially since every other city position has 2 months. And I'm going to say this right now: if they do this again in 2 years, I'm not running, because it's ridiculous. I'm retired. I take a month and a half off in the summer, and I had to come back here and down the pavements. It was like 95 degrees and high humidity. It's ridiculous. So it's unfair. So I support this this thing.
Yeah. I would also add to that my own personal situation for those of us who have children, and oftentimes that can be a busy sports season. And literally, I need to go on public record now because not the last election, but the time before, my daughter was in sports tournaments, and my husband thankfully walked my petitions around. And then the first time that we did it, actually, Randy's wife, Samantha, I had to get neighborhood people to assist me with this because I was already committed to helping the team and traveling and driving kids to tournaments, and wasn't here, unfortunately. So it would be great if we had a bigger window that we could count on.
It also discriminates against teachers, high school, elementary school, college professors who don't work in the summer. That's all right.
I just want to say that I'm actually become a big fan of knocking on doors, as I'm sure we all are at different points, but I agree with you that giving a month to just get everyone and for a volunteer position just seems, it doesn't encourage people to run. And if we really want people to run and more people to do this, then we should have a little more time. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay, is there a motion? Oh, yes.
I was just wondering, does the commission, like, do you guys feel that other commissioners across the city might make that same decision as you, to not run if the, like, petition period isn't extended, as of, like?
I mean, I have no way of determining that, but, you know, it stands to reason that a number of people will not run for this reason.
We did circulate this, a letter to all of the ANC commissioners in the district, and we didn't get, I mean, we only had a week to do it, I think, and we got responses from all 8 wards, from people who joined us in that objection to the rule that the Board of Elections had imposed. So I think there are other people who are affected by exactly the same.
Do you feel like supporting the other ANC councils around the city, as you sent out this letter, like supporting the testimony you're describing?
Good point. I mean, we should probably just circulate this to other ANCs too, so that they have an opportunity to join in. Yeah.
But if you need at least one other commissioner to say the same thing that Chris said, I'll say it. So.
Now you can say this more than one.
I'll set with us. Okay. All right. Is there a motion to adopt the testimony then? All those in favor? 7-0. Okay. All right. The next piece of testimony is something that also is going to come up a little bit later in our meeting, and that is the testimony before the Committee on Facilities and Procurement on February 20th about the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. And this is an issue that we talked about at our last meeting, and we've talked about it repeatedly over the last, I think, 5 months or so, that we don't have adequate written formal guidelines for what kinds of grants are acceptable, and specifically what kinds of grant applications will meet the public benefits requirement. And Becky and I have been going round and round with Gottlieb Simon too this week, trying to get him to tell us exactly what is required in order to get a grant approved. And he gave me a bunch of very, very general, unhelpful things this last week. And then finally, today, told me that the application that we were working on for the Wilson crew would not be approved. And I don't know how to get any further guidance from the Office of ANCs other than to go to the review, to the oversight hearing and let the council know that this is a problem and that we're not going to be able to do grants the way we would like to help community organizations if we don't get better guidance. And so I think, at a minimum, they should have written guidelines. So that's the testimony essentially, is to insist that the Office of ANC Commissioners adopt some written guidelines for grants. I mean,
And the guidelines, really? I mean, we can't help any youth groups that are larger than our ANC. That's ridiculous.
I know.
I think they need to be amended again. I think that they just really narrowed the scope too much.
yeah, well, if the problem with the council, they should be dealing with it, if the statute is inadequate. But I think the statute is incredibly vague, and you could remedy that if you had an office of ANCs that was willing to be more imaginative and look at this creatively and say, okay, how can we actually serve the community? And they're not doing that.
Could I ask what his rationale was?
Yes. His rationale was that serving 30, 40, 50, 100 people in our ANC was not sufficiently broad. It didn't serve the whole community. Now the other things we've done, I think, arguably are broader. One is we approved the grant for the Friends of Chevy Chase Circle to Tulips. Everybody who passes the circle is going to get some benefit from that.
That's physically in our ANC.
Right. It's in our ANC, and so it's clearly going to have a benefit.
But Northwest Neighbors Village, all of those people aren't in our ANC.
Right.
But I think a large number of them are. I mean,
But he didn't know that. He doesn't
Right.
know the exact
That's
number.
But the question or issue that I have, it also goes to the issue of due process, because here the statute is vague. Yes, he is the staff person that the statute has said can make a decision on this issue, but I find it to be very subjective. What is it, what objective factors is it based on with that? Because one could argue the other side, as Commissioner Madak, that it does have a great public benefit. You know, I actually, behind the scenes myself, have just done research on the rowing team, and it's very interesting because I found that they were the first one here in the district. They're the only public institution, and they are actually the founding member, and I wrote this down, of the Washington Metro Interscholastic Rowing Association. So they compete both regionally and nationally, and so I would argue that this is something that not only changes the students' lives, but the entire community. When you look at the staff, there are a number of them who were students, who were able to go to college, receive scholarships, and now they've come back and become coaches. So I personally see it as perhaps there is an issue with they're just presenting the correct documentation to show this, documentation in addition to having some objective factors that we could look at, aside from an individual Gottlieb. And there's nothing against Gottlieb because he's been tasked, that's his job. I just feel like, you know.
That's why I think you need guidelines.
Yes.
You need guidelines. You need somebody to say, okay, here are the rules.
Right.
And then, you know, you can do an application and you can know whether you fit the rules or not.
Right.
But it's just right now. I mean, he sent me, this is the definition that he sent me of what constitutes a public benefit. Whether the expenditure confers direct public benefit of a reasonably general character, that is to say, a significant part of the public as distinguished from a remote and theoretical benefit. That tells me nothing. And so it's just not helpful. And then for him to come back and...
Isn't the public benefit to they represent the district?
Yes.
Nationally,
Yeah.
we've had the first African-American rower go to the Olympics in the Two-Cox Crew. What better representative of the district than something like that? I don't get it.
Yeah, I agree. But we've sent him all of that information, and he still nevertheless comes back and says, today, he says, based on the information provided so far, and I sent him the entire application, the third time we've revised it, regarding the public purpose test, as well as those who the beneficiaries are, not just the public purpose issue, the grant, in our judgment, would not comply with the requirements of the ANC law. So, I mean, I think it's outrageous.
Yeah.
But
So my question is that the crew now has service hours. So one of the grants that they approved in the past
was youth offenders coming back into the community. They hired them for so many hours to do cleanup in their area. So can we rewrite this and have the Wilson crew do community service hours for us, like shoveling snow or cleaning up the avenue or helping weed the circle or do something that we designate? And I know there's a 90-day requirement, but that would take us into spring.
Well, that may be. Who knows? I mean, he's not giving us any guidelines. All he's doing is saying no.
Yeah, and there's no funding. This crew team gets no funding. There's no group that funds this.
No, I mean,
So are we to assume that this office is the final decision maker
Yes.
in this process so far as the new statute has said?
Yes.
Whereas the prior statute, and I know we had this discussion, gave us an option to go to the...
No, the prior statute put all of the responsibility on the auditor.
Yes, the auditor. So from the auditor, we got a legal opinion.
Well, the auditor went to the Attorney General.
Yes, yes.
There have been Attorney General opinions in the past that have been very general, just like the one I read. That comes actually from an Attorney General opinion. But all of that responsibility that rested with the auditor before now rests with the Office of the ANCs. So there's no appeal to it. It's just he's the final say. And you know, a good case can be made, I think, that if you're going to determine what constitutes a public benefit within our ANC, we should be the ones who decide.
Right, because isn't it, I mean, when you think about that, then the statute gives us, we're elected officials, we're supposed to carry great weight. We are publicly elected officials. However, now we are within the purview of relying on this office to be the final decision maker, right? Which doesn't make sense. I totally agree with you.
There's a line in your testimony that says, isn't the ANC best equipped to make a decision about whether a grant will produce a public benefit within the commission's area without being questioned by it later? And I think that sort of sums up what we're saying, and just that we need some kind of direction here, because I mean, really, these grants we've got some like pretty worthy projects, generally speaking, but we want to be able to know that we're not going to get the money deducted and penalized later on.
I know this is a done deal. We're looking to change it in the future. But I just want to point out the inconsistency. If he says Wilson isn't in our ANC, physically it's not in our ANC. Northwest Neighbors Village is also not in our ANC. Their address is 4901 Connecticut Avenue, which is that 3 or 3? So they're not in our ANC. So the consistency is lacking. And without written guidelines, rather than how somebody feels someday in saying something, it's beyond ridiculous.
Right,
So
at this point, I mean, it's very subjective. Any grant that we have, not just taking it outside of the crew. If their office or God didn't like it, then it would not necessarily be approved.
Right. And the consequences of not approval, if we paid it out, are draconian, because we get dinged for a lot, and we can't afford that.
So are you going to give testimony?
Yes.
We have to vote on that?
Yes. We're going to vote on that.
But I would say,
I can't guess what the vote's going to be.
not every ANC gives them grants either, right?
No, there are a lot of ANCs who don't get grants at all.
It's a good thing that we do.
Yeah.
We should, We should be able to do it.
Okay, all those in favor of the testimony that's been drafted? 7-0, okay. Okay, the last testimony on the oversight hearings is the Department of Transportation and the Environment. Or DDOT is just transportation. The Department of Transportation is before the Committee on Transportation and the Environment. This testimony identifies some concerns that we have, and first of all, applauds a lot of the good things that DDOT has been doing, and particularly under the new director, Jeff Marucci. He's done a much better job of coming out to the community, talking to people, listening to them. He's much better in that regard. Bonnie's crossing her fingers.
Hey, I hope. I have hope.
But I mean, in a year and a half, we've seen more of Jeff Marushian than we saw of Lee Dorn's show over his entire tenure. I mean, we never saw him for anything. But Jeff has been out in the community talking to residents a lot. And he's compiled a good staff too. He's doing a very good job. Nevertheless, we identified particularly some communications problems, and there are a lot of them that persist. We cite several examples. One is the installation of bioretention cells. That has been a particular problem that persisted over 2 years. Then the need for a robust communications plan on Oregon Avenue as we go into the construction of that rehabilitation project. We get, as Robert was alluding to earlier, talking about the Public Space Committee applications, we frequently do not get notices or timely notices about those, or about planned construction work. They're getting a little bit better about that, but still there are a lot of instances where people just show up. The failure to give the ANC and the community updates for long planned projects like the Chestnut Street sidewalks, for instance, and the Chevy Chase Circle safety improvements, and the Broad Branch Road rehabilitation, which is now in its 5th year at least. So we're hoping to frame these as criticisms that can help them improve, but because we think there's a lot of improvement that's occurred already, but there's still a long way to go. It's a difficult task they have, but we think they can do it better. And so that's the gist of that testimony. I think this is really important because DDOT has so many projects in our ANC that affect so many of our residents. So I would move that we adopt that testimony. Any comments? All those in favor? 7-0. All right. There's one other piece of testimony. I don't think we need to spend any time on it particularly, and that's with at the Department of Energy and Environment on their proposed regulations for the CRIAC relief. And this is separate from the oversight hearings because DOE is going ahead and trying to implement these regulations. But it's exactly the same issue that under their regulations, they would approve Ingleside, but they would not approve Knollwood for relief. And it makes no sense whatsoever. So anyway, that testimony is actually tomorrow night, or tomorrow afternoon, 4 o'clock. And I would propose that I go there and deliver this testimony and let them know in uncertain terms that they've made a mistake.
Is this testimony before the DC Council? Or
no, this is tomorrow. Tomorrow it is before DOE. And I think it will be the director, Tommy Wells, who will make that decision about those regulations, whether the regulations can be changed. Now, interestingly, too, I have asked them for a specific citation for the basis of their regulations. Where in the statute does it say that you can make this distinction between Ingleside and Knollwood? Yeah. And I asked them that about 10 days ago, followed up 3 times, and they still have not gotten back to me about that. So I don't think they've got an answer.
Is this a public meeting?
Yes.
Is specifically for...
It's comments on the regulations. It's a public hearing for comments on the regulations. Okay, so, like I said, yes, Thelma.
Well, we at Knollwood very much appreciate your testifying on this. I just wanted to point out that Knollwood was made a nonprofit in 1958, and this is, and therefore, as his testimony says, it was done under the federal guidelines. And I don't know when the district set it up, but it's
before home rule.
Yeah.
It was before home rule.
And in addition to that, this has been, I don't know if all of commissioners know that, this has been quite a burden on Norwood. We've done a tally, and as of 2017, we paid $64,500 in this CRIAC fee, and for a nonprofit and for retirement, it's quite a large amount of money that we had to pay for this, and certainly appreciate your going forward with this.
That's just for 2017.
No, I'm very sorry, yeah. No, some total $260,000.
I thought it was a lot more.
09 to 2017.
Since 2009.
I'm a little confused, because I thought you had to be a nonprofit federally to be recognized on this state level.
It's not, for DC tax purposes, the Department of Tax and Revenue decides who is exempt from property tax. And they decide that for some organizations like Inglewood. And then the others are sort of grandfathered in because they're federal. But they don't specifically designate them as exempt from property tax. There's a specific provision in the statute that they use to designate exemptions for nonprofits from property tax. Ingleside is under that charitable provision. Norwood is under a miscellaneous provision. So it's a bureaucratic administrative designation that has no realistic meaning to distinguish between those two institutions.
So is Norwood exempt from property tax?
Yes, they are, but because they are a federal.
So they're not applying the same criteria.
That's right. That's exactly right.
What would it take for them to be under DC too? Just file paperwork, or can they not do that?
I was told that they can't do that. There's nothing they can do. I don't know if the DOE really understands their own regulations very well. Davis?
What is the $260,000 tax?
That's the payments into the CRIAC fund fee since 2009.
That's a sewer one.
Right, it's the stormwater runoff. Clean Rivers Impervious Area charge. Okay, all those in favor of adopting this testimony for DOE 7-0? Okay. Now, we had the Wilson Crew application on as the last item on the agenda, but that's, we've really basically gone through that.
I would just like to, with the commission's approval or permission, I would like you to reach out to Gottlieb and see if they give us community service, if we can pay them for that. Like 100 hours of community service for $2,000, if that would qualify or not. And it would be strictly in our ANC, and I will be more than happy to be the overseer of that. And if anyone has any projects that are, they want me to work on with them, would that qualify them?
I think we probably have to identify what the projects are. Satisfy Gottlieb.
Which we could do, but could we see if it's going to be feasible first?
Yeah.
Sweeping.
I will ask Gottlieb.
Because we have the Avenue, we have Lafayette Park, there's stuff we could, we have the office, if they can do some website stuff for us or something, there's things we could do, and we check this.
Jobs can do computers too.
Yes.
Okay, all right, well, I will ask Gottlieb, and we'll see whether he responds to me.
Right, because there's nothing that prevents us from going back and.
Yeah, before we bring it up again, you all.
Right.
Definitely we should vote on.
No, I don't think we need to vote on that.
I'm going to have the commissioners.
Right, no, that's a very good idea. I will write Gottlieb. Okay, we're on to commission business, I think. Okay, the meeting minutes for the January 28th meeting were published on our website and on the listserv and next door. Any modifications or changes? All those in favor of approving the minutes? 7-0. Okay, checks, have some checks?
No checks today.
No checks. No checks today. Okay, for our February 25th meeting, Congresswoman Norton is going to join us again to talk about issues affecting the district. If you have any issues that you would like for her to address specifically.
There you go, the nonprofit status.
What?
The nonprofit and the CRIAC.
How is that a federal issue?
Well, because they're registered federally, it's not recognized by DC for the CRIAC.
Well, how do we know that? I mean, can't we at least raise the question with her? And
Well, you can certainly raise it when she comes, yeah.
One Congress regulate that kind of stuff.
no, we're not talking about regulation. We're talking about. No, we're not.
I see what you mean, though, about stitches.
There's one issue that might be very interesting, I know is very topical right now, and that is this issue I mentioned earlier about the shift of prosecutions for gun laws from Superior Court to federal court, and whether that's an appropriate relinquishment of district authority.
We could ask her whatever we want, but she said,
Yeah, sure.
okay.
One thing, I wanted to give her a heads up on anything that we specifically wanted her to be prepared to answer. We want to surprise her. Okay, surprise her. Okay, another issue is going to be, and this sort of follows up with the presentation from Congresswoman Norton, is that discussion by Peter Lynch, a delegate from the Ward 3 Democrats, on current activities in the district and beyond on DC statehood. He's a constituent too, right? Right.
And there are going to be other people with him.
Right, okay. And then, Becky, are we going to be ready to talk about Lafayette maintenance issues?
I haven't received anything back from DGS, I have to see.
All right, well,
Because
I keep
you know,
rolling that over,
right now.
whenever you say.
Hopefully. I'll follow up on that tomorrow again.
And then there are two other pieces of oversight hearing testimony we might consider, and that's from DC Water and the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. I know Chris has some real concerns about ECRA, about houses on Connecticut Ave. And DC Water is going to be primarily talking about CRIAC too. At least that's what I got in mind. And then finally, the Public Space Committee has revised the small cell guidelines. This is the small cell wireless system that we objected to previously. We objected to their guidelines. They revised them, have not addressed any of our concerns about safety and studies to be done before they roll this thing out. And so we can discuss whether we want to submit comments again. The comments are due, I can't remember, they're due a week or so after our hearing, our next meeting, I think.
From what I understand, they didn't address the 42 other comments that they received either.
Really? Yeah. Well, we can certainly dig them on ours, and let the other people who had comments raise them about theirs. Okay, anything else? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it.